Hey, welcome to another episode of Electrical Theology Esoteric Life Coaching. I am your host, Charles. If this is your first time viewing this channel, I appreciate you showing up. And we basically get into the esoteric world. And what is the esoteric world? It's just your internal world. And with that internal world, there's internal mechanisms and machinations and frequencies and transmitters and receivers. We can call them cells, we can call them whatever you want, but ultimately we are built from a cosmic stream. Keep it simple like that. Just as if I were to take a cup and dip it into the ocean, and in that cup I now have an ocean. It's not the entire ocean, but it is all the same parts as the bigger ocean. So this vessel that we are in, this flesh bag, is a cup, and we contain all there is within the universe, our internal universe, as well as the external, because our internal creates the external. Does that make sense to you? We learn how to communicate with ourselves. We understand the intricacies of communing or union or ions or one ion. Right? That one word communing has 4 different meanings. If you keep breaking it down, you'll get to the intricacies and the frequencies of this live stream that I'm talking about, this cosmic stream. And that's where you'll end up finding the me-ness or the you-ness, however you want to put this, within all things. So everyone around you is also cups of oceans or streams. And in order to understand how to communicate with one another, we have to learn how to understand and communicate with ourselves, because we feel disconnected. We feel less than because we don't have our more than part, our great cosmic seed. We're the micro, but we're missing the macro. We're missing the connectedness. So what I'm teaching is how to reconnect and put yourself back in, out of the cup, meaning out of this flesh, right, and then back into the stream. Now, I'm not talking exiting this body right now. I'm just talking understanding that this body is porous. It has ports. And so through that we can have portals and access portals to other live streams or other beings and start creating a communion or union with the one. Now, whatever that one is for you, that's up to you. I'm not here to tell you what the one is, other than it's electricity for me. Make sense? So through our ability to commune with ourselves, meaning bringing our heart and our minds, our right brain, left brain, right? And understand that there is no timeline, there's just an unfolding moment. In this unfolding moment, once we're in that, which is called the present state or the pre-sent state, is that we are constantly streaming. And so what I'm speaking now was already pre-sent, and now it's sent. That makes sense? All within that microsecond, that picosecond, I received the pre-sent and then I sent it back out. Right? So the pre-consciousness, the pre-thought, that's what we call that. And if you don't know what I'm talking about there, go back to the original videos and I break down that, this, and all these other terms that in essence take off the iconic names, the symbolic names, and just give it a very simple understanding of what this is, even though that is a name and this is a name, and Shambhala and hierarchy and God is a name. It's just a very translucent name, if you will, to help you understand that you're translucent. Your energy that's within you, your consciousness that's in you, can come out of this flesh bag and go wherever it wants. Right? It just goes through portals or gates or doorways or wormholes. There's many names for them, but it's basically an opening. So your consciousness is not closed off from everything, the big C. And so by learning to communicate with yourself and others and the cosmic streams, you become the medium, which then your medium is a liquid force, if you will, an electrical liquid force that can flow in and out of this shell and out into the cosmic streams and the dimensions and realms and whatever else you want to call them, the verses. So our goal here is just to get you to start communicating with yourself and then being able to have a deeper relationship, not only with yourself, but with other people, and then having the capacity to have deep or electrically deep conversations or connections with other people or beings' frequencies, and not burn out or burn the shell up or go crazy because you're not understanding what you're seeing or hearing. All right, so let's get on with it. Last video, basically, we're on the fourth part. It should have been part 4. Let's change that real quick. There. And this will be unhealthy communication styles. There we go. Click that change. All right, so let's get on with it. So let's just do a really quick review. That last, we talked about the 4 levels of effective communication, or in this, understanding that some people, there's what I mean, what I say, what you hear, and what you assume. And I'm not going to go over these, I'm just reviewing, so if you want to understand that deeper, watch the last video. And then we talked about why communication happens. Why? Because we're not perfect. No one is. So therefore, your communication and my communications will always be imperfect or misinterpreted. So the more we commune with ourselves, the more we can do our best to say what is in the immediacy of what is. Not being in a hurry, but stating what is in our heart, and then letting our voice, our mouthpiece, say the same thing that's in our heart. And this gives us clarity, basically. And then we talked about the intonations, right? So in order to, when you're wanting to know something or have someone explain themselves further, you can just, hey, can you explain yourself further? Or through communications, or the toning that we talked about yesterday, was being able to tone up or tone down. If I tone up at the end of my sentence, then that causes the person in front of me to question further. And if I lower my voice, then that has a person making a statement or an action statement that they're going to do from us having a dialogue, right? Basic coaching style. So part 4 is unhealthy listening styles. We talked about the 4 styles of communication. Now let's see what the unhealthy ones are. Right, now we're going to break this word unhealthy up. So we have un, heal, and thy. So right, we just know to undo, that type stuff. And then he or al, right? The he god or the she god, right? Or whatever you want to call it. Again, this is neither he nor she, but because we're breaking down words, we're giving the anthropomorphic God. But the anthropomorphic God of religions and stuff, if you go 1 octave above, becomes the God that created the anthropomorphic God and the other 7 consciousnesses or frequencies. Again, this is all in past videos, so I encourage you to go watch those things if it's interesting to you. So, heal and al, we know that al, el, Elohim, any of these are names for God. And then thy is also just a repetition of the name God. Thee, thou, theology, theo, it's all God. So it's basically the he, she, God, that's listening. So it's just how we humans, the transmitter receivers, the male or females in our life or in ourselves, we understand that we are the thou, the thy, the God, right? The electrical God, not the anthropomorphic religious God. And then, so unhealthy listening, so it's ungodly listening, if you want to put it that way, or that you're not using your God ears to hear. And therefore, there's going to be mistranslations, or you won't know how to have someone explain it further, right, without your ego being defended. So that's basically what I'm saying by unhealthy. It's just you're disconnected from your God self. That's the simple version, all right? So what are some of the things we do to have disconnections or unhealthy listening styles? As we jump to conclusions, we're pre-thinking, which means when someone's talking, we're not really listening. We only heard one thing they said, but they're still continuing to talk. But we're already in our head with 5 other conversations or decisions, and we're not really listening to them. So when it's our turn to speak and we speak, it's not even on the same wavelength of which they were thinking of, because you're in your own head trying to come up with something different, right? And maybe defending that ego. Right? So you're personalizing, right? You're bringing in your own personal beliefs, which that's fine, nothing wrong or right about it. But if you're wanting to adopt or adapt to other people's frequencies, right? And this is what communion is, or communicating is we're trying to create a resonance, a vibrational resonance with that other person's frequency. We're getting to know them, their frequency. We're all unique frequencies, right? You can call it their soul, their spirit. All these names are great, but for me, it's just electricity. And so I'm trying to figure out what their wavelength or their radio station is. So I have to tune in. We talked about tuning or toning with the one last time, in the last video. So when I bring in myself, I can personalize myself, but then I need to make sure that say, hey, this is my perspective, right? Because I own my perspective. My perspective is neither right nor wrong. But if someone gives me their perspective, I can say, hey, that's a unique perspective. Here's my perspective on that, right? And then see if there's commonality, see if there's differences. If there is, why are there differences? Let's have a conversation around that, a loving conversation, an unfolding moment conversation, not a defended conversation, right? Because none of us are wrong and right. Why? Because we're imperfect. So there is not perfect and imperfect is not wrong or right. It's just we're missing ions, and that's this whole why I'm doing all these classes and videos is because we're missing pieces of the puzzle to knowing who we are, because we're only a cup and not an ocean, right? Negative thoughts, right? Those are obvious. Offended types, these are passive people. These people, we talked about it before, they're just offended at everything because they don't know who they are. They have no core values because they never strategized. They don't know their strategies. They don't know their core values, as we said. They don't know their self-esteem, their self-worth, their self-view. Right? They've never done the work. It's easier and more comfortable just to lash out at other people and blame them and fault them and tell them that they're racist or sexist or whatever the X's is within those words. And then unhealthy ones is talking about the worst case scenario. Now we can talk in logistics and say, okay, what's the best and worst case scenario? But if you're always a doomsayer and looking at the negative of everything, then the conversations will always go down, right? And then catastrophizing or magnifying something. Oh my God, did you hear that the world's going to blow up because it's too hot? It's catastrophizing or magnifying something, right? Does the planet go through changes? Absolutely. Do I have enough information to give a statement on if it's warming or cooling? No, it goes through cycles. I can read books. I can listen to other people's studies, and we don't know who funded that study and what their biasness was or their imperfections were. So the only thing I can do with anyone's information is just look at the data, and then I can try to go to the panoptic perspective of that data, and not be misconstrued on some myopic person's perspective. I'm going to look at everyone's perspective, right? Because everyone has their own personal agenda. Everyone has their own reason for why they do what they do, and I don't know all those reasons. So all I can do is look at their data and then say, oh, I noticed that every X amount of years there's a ice storm or a global cooling, and then after so many years there's a global warming, or after so many thousands of years there's a warming, there's a cooling, there's a warming and a cooling. But I don't buy into anyone's rhetoric of why this is happening, right? Because again, we don't have enough data, we don't have enough instruments to be able to calculate billions of years ago on this planet. So I keep my neutral positions, but at the same time, I'm not going to catastrophize a situation because I don't have the data. So by having a good conversation, I can say, hey, I just as I explained to y'all, I only have limited data, so I really can't give an opinion. I can give you a false opinion or an incomplete opinion or my incomplete perspective or my imperfect perspective. You see what I'm saying? I can say this to somebody else, right? Because I'm not trying to be right or wrong. I'm just giving them my data or what my research told me, right? So we don't want to blow it out of proportion, basically, guys. And that's what mainstream media does. That's what mainstream education does, because they're bought and paid for by corporations, and they have their agendas, and they need to sell a product because they're fiduciary responsible for their shareholders. So whatever they can do to make money, they're going to sell you their products, their perspectives. So again, I don't know these perspectives. I don't have enough data for them. I don't know the people pushing their agendas or the mainstream medias. All I can do is look at how they do it, and then I'm going to use critical thinking and rational thinking, put my heart and mind together, and then I can come up with my own cost-benefit analysis or my risk-to-reward ratio, right? I'm going to do this all myself, and that's what an individual is. It doesn't buy into the collective mainstream media. And again, I'm not saying mainstream media is bad or good. It's just their perspective. It's their agenda. It's not my agenda. I can agree or disagree with anyone's agenda, but it's still their agenda. That makes sense? All right, so let's move on. Those are the unhealthy. Now here's some more, is that rigid rule keeping. Rigid rule keeping is when someone that they only see one perspective, which is their perspective, and their perspective is the only right perspective, because they have their own rules and regulations about what it is they're studying and what it is they're seeing. Right? Or generalization. Well, everyone's doing it. Well, everyone believes it because of mainstream media. Everyone should go get this jab. Everyone should not get this jab. Right? Everyone has their agenda. So overgeneralizing is when we don't really have any information. We're just given a synopsis of that information. Right? And deletion, when we forget that we've done to others. So we may be critical of someone else, but we forget that we were critical to other people ourselves. Or is that when you bring your biased opinions, your imperfect opinions out, and again, keep in mind there's 8 billion opinions on this earth, and I'm rounding up, of course, on the population because I don't know. Not everyone has ever been calculated on this planet. Not everyone that's in this world has all been calculated. We get close, but we don't really know how many or the exact number of people on this planet, because anywhere from 400,000 people die a day and 400,000 people are born every day, basically. Right? And again, I'm generalizing there, but y'all can look at the data. But again, the data is false because we're imperfect beings, so imperfect beings just calculate basic or round up or round down of information. Right? So we got to understand that if we're being critical or if we're being judgmental and opinionated, do you want someone to be judgmental and critical and opinionated toward you? So if, again, the golden rule, if you don't like it being done to you, then start treating people how you want them to treat you, right? Labeling, again, I'm a unlabeler. I take labels off of everything because that's sort of the finite. It became finite at that point, but the finite's an illusion or more a delusion. So when you look at that label close enough and you take the label off, then you can see a stream of energy, and how you want to describe that stream of energy or direct those ions is up to you. Minimalizing, I see this a lot of time. Well, it's no big deal. It's okay. You know, that person, they didn't yell at me really. They were just stressed, right? They're minimalizing the effect that it had on them. So in a communication, if we're being fair, and again, fair is going to be whatever, it's one of those words, it's just a bunch of air. Within the word fair is air. So whatever, if you want equal time or if you want to be equally heard, that's sort of what I'm calling fair at this moment, but it's an equal time. And if that person is taking up all the time and you didn't get your 2 words within that conversation, and someone else says, well, why didn't you speak up? Why didn't you say that? Why didn't you challenge them? Oh, it's nothing. It's no biggie. No, it's a big thing because you're minimalizing your worth. I'm not saying you have to disagree or with that. You just give your point of view or your opinion, right? And if it wants to be general or specific, that's up to you as well. Right? And then black and white, you know, it's either this or that. It's either, you know, there's either 2 people in the world, this person or that person. You know, there's only this or that. And it's not. That's a blind spot when people come. They're short-sighted within the information, so their egos filling in the blanks. All right. And then, what are some of our blocks to listening, truly deep listening to the other side, and giving them and letting them know that we're listening to them and validating what they're saying? It doesn't mean we're agreeing or disagreeing. It means we're just validating that they are saying something and we're receiving what they're saying. Obvious distractions. You're looking at your cell phone. Cell phones are going off. Birds are flying. Squirrels. Right? Whatever this thing that's getting your attention, you know, or distracting you. If you're a deep listener, you're going to be looking at them the whole time. Right? A little trick I always do, so you don't look at like you're seeing directly into one eye or the other eye. You just stare at the nose, right at the peak of the nose, and then that way it doesn't look like you're in left or right eye. Right? Because if you look directly in one eye, people get a little nervous and then shaken, and that's okay. But again, do we want to manipulate people? No. We want to give them equal time by listening deeply to what they have without being distracted. Okay? We don't want our reframe to be rehearsed, right? Yes, when we say something over and over, a lot of times it's rote and rehearsed, but we want to make sure that when we're reframing something back, that it's just not saying the last three words of their sentence constantly. Right? Reframing is, if you're deep listening, then that person may be trying to figure something out or understand something or want to know what direction to go into. And I'm not going to tell them, but I'm going to help them reframe and respond to that. But it's not going to be rote or rehearsal every time. It's going to be different. I'm going to change the tone up. I'm going to go up or down. I'm going to challenge them maybe by reframing their statement back to them. Fact finding. Well, I read it in the book, and therefore it's so-and-so. Right? Well, do you know that 97% of the people don't read? Well, I just made that up. And so does everyone else, because everything else in this world is made up. Right? So every fact you hear, everything is just someone's opinion or imperfection toward facts. Right? A fact can be changed. What is science fact today will be science fiction tomorrow. What is religiously understood now will be something else totally different, or a new god or icon will come in, right? Because we know throughout history the proselytization of one culture into another culture, that enculturation then overtook the belief systems, right? Just as Americans, when we took over the natives on this thing, we took away or tried to take away their history, their religion, if you will, right? And then we just basically killed people who were dancing or singing or weaving or doing whatever, is that they didn't want that lineage of knowledge to go forward, right? Again, I'm not blaming fault, I'm just giving history here. Again, that's someone's version of history that I've read in certain books. Was I there when it happened? No. So for me, I don't know other than what I'm reading, but I'm open to looking at the facts, other people's facts, to get a complete story. Right? Being judgmental, that's obvious. Trying to solve a client's problem or another person's problem. I'm not here to solve anyone else's problem, right? Solves have the word love in it, right? And so all I can do is being open-hearted and deep listening, and that's love. I'm sharing love in that moment without words, right? And that rapport from that other person, or there's a rapport being established between us two, or whoever, or the group that I'm speaking with, is that I'm not there to solve their problems, because it's up to them to solve their own problems, because it's them who are seeing life as a problem. Now, we all have puzzles that we like to solve, and we're missing these ions or these puzzle pieces, but it's up to us to create the one that's missing by extracting the essence of what we gathered from a life experience, right? So we can go on forever about that, but basically I'm not trying to fix someone. In classes, when we're teaching this, everyone wants to give their opinion or tell them what they think is best for them. I don't know what's best for anyone else. I don't know what's best for my kids. When I'm growing up, I'm the guardian of them, but it's up to them as they get their own cognitive abilities, and that's what I teach them when they're young, is to think for themselves, to question everything. Then it's up to them to solve their own issues, because it's up to them to work through those issues, right? They gather strength and intelligence and the art of argumentation, the art of negotiation, right? Not only with themselves, but with others and life itself, right? So I'm not here to fix. So if you're trying to solve other people's problems, then they will always come to you for their problems. But then when you tell them something and it doesn't work out, guess who they're coming to and blaming, right? So you're just perpetuating then a victim, persecutor, and savior complex. So, and then imposing cognitive bias, again, your personal opinion. The only thing 8 billion people have on this planet is we all have an opinion, because we all have a unique perspective. And no two perspectives will ever be the same. So we have 8 billion gods, we have 8 billion opinions about the globe, we have 8 billion opinions about everything, right? So when you're communicating with people, just take a overall view. Are you bringing in these blocks to listening to someone? Because all these are about being right or wrong. about being perfect or imperfect, right? And then basically the 7 imbalanced communication areas that can cause stress. I'm not spending a lot of time. You can figure these out for yourself, but social and family relationships, career and educational, money, personal finances, physical health, recreation, life routine, responsibility, giving back to society, contribution, mental, emotional, and inner well-being. So these are the areas where we can improve our communication, right? How to relate to other people's ship, how to aspire to other people's ions. Right? Understand that money is just energy. Right? I can unfold energy into money. Right? If that's your motivation. Money's not always my motivation, so I don't always have it, but then when I focus on it, I'll have it. But it's just a thing. Right? In this society, they need this thing in which to commerce or barter or do whatever with, but money is just energy. Just always keep that in mind. Just like an opinion is just energy because it all created thought. So someone gave value to that rock in the dirt, right? Just as seashells were, just as animals were, just as crystals were and are, or essential oils. Everything has a value because someone gave it value, right? So take a look at these. I'm not going to go over each and every one of them. That this is what's going to help you become a better communicator by applying a deep listening style. All right, guys, that's going to about do it for all these communications. Hopefully this was helpful. If you want further information on any of these, definitely give me a comment below and either answer your question or we can do a video on that as well. All right, well, I appreciate you hanging in there, guys. Love each and every one of you for spending your time watching these videos, and hopefully they're helping you out. Until next time, guys, see ya.